So it only took worldwide event for everybody to understand why Americans love America so much and why people who come here they love it so much.
Before the World Cup, the international narrative surrounding America had reached a fever pitch of cynicism. For years, European headlines, television news panels, and social media commentary had conditioned millions of football fans across the continent to view the United States with profound skepticism. When the host cities were announced spanning from New York and Los Angeles to Dallas, Miami, and Atlanta, the reaction from die-hard European supporters was far from enthusiastic. Fan forums were flooded with warnings. European supporters braced themselves for hostile streets, non-existent public transit, commercialized sports culture, and cold, transactional interactions. Millions of travelers stepped onto long-haul flights across the Atlantic, expecting a challenging, chaotic ordeal, holding on to the comforting assumption that Western Europe remained the undisputed pinnacle of lifestyle, culture, and social harmony. Then, the airplanes landed.
Loving the fact that the World Cup fans are coming to America and they love the country. They're just totally changing everybody's opinion on how the country really is. They didn't expect us to be so nice. They didn't expect things to be so big. It's hilarious how they love like Walmart and Waffle House, like places that we don't necessarily care about, because it's just part of our daily lives. And I've heard a lot of them say, that we take America for granted and, realize what you got. And I agree with that to a large point. But, I guess what they don't realize is, the only thing that, if anything, we complain about is, making sure that we can still live in this glorious country, because the cost of living is going skyrocketing up. And then it seems like the racism has been a little heightened here. So you just want to make sure that you keep a good culture and you can afford to live in the place that people like so much. And I think that's where you hear the majority of the complaints. But my question for these Europeans, these Japanese, and all of these other World Cup fans that are over here is, what exactly do you do overseas that you can take a month off, okay, stay in an Airbnb, you probably spending at least $100 a day on food, and you going to go back to your country, and you still got a job, and you still got a bank account? I'm going to tell you now, we don't get no 30 days off or no job in the States. So, yes, this is the greatest country in the world, but there's obviously some things that y'all are doing over there that we need to bring over here.
The moment international fans walked through customs and stepped out into host cities like Dallas, Miami, Los Angeles, and New York, that carefully constructed global media illusions suffered a violent, instantaneous collapse. Foreign visitors didn't find a dystopian war zone or a cold, indifferent society. Instead, they were greeted by an overwhelming wave of radical American hospitality, eye-popping physical infrastructure, and a sheer scale of abundance that made European cities feel suddenly ancient, cramped, and strangely restricted. Fan zones packed with tens of thousands of international supporters became hotspots of shock and awe. High-tech stadium facilities, two-car garage, suburban homes, 6-lane highways, 24/7 drive-through conveniences, and strangers striking up genuinely warm conversations on street corners completely shattered their pre-existing biases. What was supposed to be a brief 2-week vacation to watch a few football matches transformed into an existential awakening. As the tournament progressed and match after match concluded, something unprecedented began happening in airport departure lounges across the United States. European tourists who had spent years mocking American culture were now breaking down in tears, desperately extending their travel visas or openly confessing on social media that returning home felt completely impossible. This sudden, documented shift in global sentiment isn't just about football, it is a massive psychological phenomenon unfolding on a global scale. When international tourists arrive in host cities like Dallas or Atlanta, the very first thing that hits them like a physical wall is the jaw-dropping scale of American infrastructure. In Europe, major sporting events are often held in aging, historic stadiums crammed tightly into dense urban neighborhoods, where parking is an absolute nightmare and navigating narrow streets feels like a claustrophobic test of endurance. When European fans stepped into venues like AT&T Stadium in Texas, SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, or Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, their brains struggled to process the sheer engineering spectacle before them. These weren't just sports arenas. They were futuristic cathedrals of modern entertainment, featuring giant retractable roofs, massive HD screen arrays suspended in mid-air, pristine air conditioning running full blast in the middle of summer heat, and concourses wider than European city boulevards. The contrast doesn't end at the stadium gates. European fans who rented cars to explore host cities were instantly hypnotized by the freedom of the American road. In Western Europe, driving is often a stressful, highly regulated chore involving narrow lanes, originally designed for horse-drawn carriages, suffocating traffic calming measures, expensive toll roads, and parking spaces so small that opening a door without scratching the neighboring vehicle requires a military maneuver. In America, visitors discovered the effortless luxury of wide, multi-lane highways, spacious parking lots everywhere, and a driving culture built entirely around personal freedom and comfort. As the tournament moved past the group stages, European tourists began experiencing what sociologists call the micro shock of abundance, the realization that everyday life in the United States is engineered for maximum personal comfort and convenience, while life in Europe often requires constant micro-adjustments to scarcity.
When you feel that you're living in a cage, and this is what happens. I'm sorry, I love my country so much, but there's something that feels so off. 2 days ago, I was walking, and I had a shirt and I was not wearing bra because I don't need a bra and that's fucking it, and I don't need any justification. But people were just looking at me as if I was a problem, because that's the reality. When you walk here, people, they judge you. If you dare to dream too big or just to dream, it's not allowed. It's not allowed. You cannot really express yourself. And of course it exists also in the US. You have to check some boxes because in the end, it's the cutest, the skinniest and things like that. I'm talking to women especially who are going to win, but in the end, yes, in the US, I can breathe. I can breathe there, and I don't feel this competition as much with women as much as I can feel it here in France. That's why I love the US so much, and I don't fucking care about what other thinks about the US, because even myself, I was full of cliche before moving to the US, but then I moved there and I fell in love there. It was never my dream, but damn, it changed me so much. It changed me so much, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for everything that happened in my life that brought me there. Damn, I love the US so much.
European visitors who stayed in suburban Airbnb homes or visited local American friends were stunned by the physical living standards of middle-class households. They walked into suburban homes featuring high ceilings, sprawling open-plan kitchens, massive two-car garages, expansive backyards, and dedicated laundry rooms. For Europeans accustomed to paying astronomical rents for tiny semi-detached houses or matchbox apartments with low ceilings and compact appliances, the spatial freedom of American housing was mind-boggling. Inside these homes, basic appliances, like massive double-door refrigerators and sink garbage disposals, instantly exposed the inconveniences of European domestic life. Having the ability to grind up food waste with the push of a button or store weeks of fresh groceries in a single fridge suddenly made traditional European routines feel archaic and uncomfortably restrictive. Then came the convenience factor, which turned skepticism into pure obsession. European fans who were used to shops shutting down early in the evening and almost all commercial retail legally mandated to close on Sundays, in countries like Germany or Austria, suddenly found themselves in a society operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Foreign tourists experienced the effortless joy of drive-through pharmacies, drive-through banking, and drive-through coffee shops, where life could be managed entirely from the comfort of an air-conditioned vehicle cabin. Food, culture, often the primary target of European snobbery, provided another massive shock. European media had conditioned fans to believe that American cuisine consisted entirely of greasy, low-quality fast food. But as tourists ventured into real American communities, they encountered an explosive culinary ecosystem. They discovered authentic Texas smoked barbecue, regional Mexican street tacos, massive seafood boils, and a culture of hospitality where portions were staggering and service was fast, warm, and attentive. The concept of automatic ice water, free soft drink refills, and endless condiment options like American ranch dressing turned skeptics into lifelong converts. However, the most profound and emotionally devastating shock for returning European fans was not the wide roads, the massive houses, or the endless food eat, was the unexpected, overwhelming warmth of the American people. In many European capitals, public life is governed by strict social distance, privacy, and institutionalized reserve. In cities like London, Paris, Berlin, or Stockholm, making eye contact with a stranger on public transport or striking up a conversation in an elevator is often met with suspicion or outright hostility. Customer service in Europe reflects this reserved mentality. It is frequently formal, slow, and transactional. When millions of World Cup fans arrived in American host cities, this invisible barrier was completely shattered. Total strangers held doors open, offered travel directions, commented on foreign football jerseys with beaming smiles, and wished visitors a great day. Waitstaff in restaurants greeted guests with infectious energy, ensuring water glasses were constantly filled with shaved ice and making visitors feel genuinely welcomed. This spirit of radical hospitality reached its peak in the official World Cup fan festivals and local community hubs. Fans from rival nations who were taught to expect violence or hostility found themselves dancing together on city streets, sharing tailgate meals outside stadiums, and celebrating under the open American sky. Local police officers in host cities were filmed trading pin badges with fans, posing for selfies, and engaging with crowds in ways that left international visitors utterly speechless. As the tournament drew to a close and the final whistle blew, the psychological toll of this cultural revelation became glaringly obvious. Thousands of European fans faced the grim reality of packing their bags and heading back to the airport. For weeks, they had been immersed in an environment of high energy, spatial abundance, boundless optimism, and effortless convenience. Now, they were returning to crowded cities, high taxes, cramped living quarters, overcast weather, and cold social environments. The cognitive dissonance, the agonizing gap between what European media told them America was and what they experienced with their own eyes triggered a massive wave of reverse culture shock. In airport terminals across the United States, airline staff reported unusual scenes of international visitors openly weeping at departure gates, begging for visa extensions, or frantically researching long-term stay options on their phones. Social media platforms were flooded with videos of European tourists expressing profound disorientation upon returning home, missing the sense of freedom and ambition that defines American society. When analyzing this global phenomenon from a socio-economic perspective, it becomes clear that neither society is without its flaws, but they represent two fundamentally opposing philosophies of human existence. Western Europe chose the path of historical preservation, social safety nets, urban density, and quiet stability. It built societies rich with centuries of architectural heritage, walkable city centers, heavily subsidized healthcare, and strict regulations designed to maintain societal equilibrium. The United States, by contrast, chose the path of individual liberty, commercial innovation, geographic scale, and relentless ambition. It built a continental superpower designed for maximum physical space, personal mobility, economic dynamism, and unparalleled consumer comfort. It is an engine built for those who crave opportunity, scale, and the freedom to construct their own future without institutional ceilings. The tragedy for the millions of European tourists who visited America during the World Cup is that their worldview was permanently altered. They came expecting to criticize a fallen empire. Instead, they discovered a vibrant, welcoming, and hyper-convenient superpower that made their home countries feel unnaturally restricted. They realized that while Europe offers a comfortable safety net, America offers an open horizon. They learned that the media narratives they had trusted for decades were largely hollow, and that, underneath the political noise, lies a country of breathtaking beauty, unmatched energy, and unforgettable hospitality. This raises a fundamental question for viewers around the world. Given the choice, would moving to the United States for a life of high energy, vast space, and endless ambition be worth the leap? Or does the calm, historic, and regulated comfort of Europe remain the ideal way of living? Share all thoughts, personal travel experiences, and perspectives in the comments section below. If this socio-economic analysis was insightful, consider liking the video, sharing it with friends, and subscribing to the channel with notifications turned on for upcoming cultural investigations. This video is based on real reactions from international tourists, fan testimonials, and objective social analysis. All shared information is for reference, educational, and entertainment purposes only. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next documentary episode.